let's stop and take a day in what we brew for ourselves and our own personal tastes and that of our guests, and what a professional tea taster, tea blender, tea grower, tea manufacturer, importer, retailer would do in choosing and selecting and identifying teas. It's a technique that's called cupping. These are two of my cupping sets, and these are some sample teas that were sent to me to evaluate. So the biggest difference that I would point out very quickly, not even beginning to really explain all about cupping, is that we are brewing tea for consistency, not to assess which temperature or what ratio of grams of tea to water. We're trying to sort of compare all teas, or at least a large quantity of teas, by actually stressing them out. The best example I can give to introduce cupping was actually a cupping that was organized by the International Tea Cuppers Club for defects. They were Darjeeling teas. All of them came from India in a certain area, Darjeeling. Each grower sent a sample of what he considered his good, well-made tea and a defect. And the defects were anything from over-firing to under-withering to contaminated by aromas that in shipping or in storage. And what we didn't know this going in, so what we had to do was to cup the comparison teas and try to discern what was the difference, what did it taste like, how do we recognize the problems in a tea from the real quality in a tea. Cupping allows us to do this in a way that just normal tea brewing might miss. So let's look at these cupping sets, the anatomy of a cupping set. There are cups, and each cup, these are two different styles, have these little strainer notches. When you're brewing whole leaf teas, you really don't have teas slipping through these little cracks very well. And there are different styles. You have a lid that has the vent hole, and you have the big cups. And as we prepare to brew the teas, remember I said the difference in using a cupping set and doing this kind of an evaluation of a tea is consistency. So this is the time where we want to use all the techniques that we have at our disposal for consistency. And one is weighing out tea. For this purpose, I'm going to use 5 grams of tea for each set. So the next variable I can control for is the water. The kind of, in cupping, not only would it be the temperature of the water, but also the pH of the water. I would be very careful about the temperature as I add my water. And we would set our timer. Now, 5 grams of tea to this amount of water is about double the amount I would use if I were going to brew a pleasant cup of these Muscatel Darjeelings. And I also set it for the time for 5 minutes, which is much longer than I would brew the tea. But for these purposes, we're going to end up with this incredibly strong brew that we're not going to really, sip politely out of a teacup. In 5 minutes, I'll show you. It's been 5 minutes now. I'm going to decant these, and I should say that it took a long time and a lot of practice to be able to do this without losing the lid or slopping it over, and I still make mistakes. But the fun of this, you make sure that this little notch across from the handle goes down in, quickly down into the cup, and you let the knob of the lid rest, the handle on top, and there's a balance so that all of the liquor, all of the brewed tea drains out. So the last part of this that is different than brewing tea for home is something that your mother may have taught you was rude. in professional tea tasting, it is a talent and a skill that you develop to slurp your teas. You would not take this and drink it as a cup, especially if you had to do this to hundreds of teas in a day. You know, your caffeine level would just shoot through the roof. You only take a small amount and you slurp it. You draw in air as you're drawing in the tea, and you move it around your mouth, and your senses are much more enlivened by the additional air. These are 2 teas from one country, India, from one area, Darjeeling, from 2 different farms. They are sold by the same exporter, and there's so many things that are alike about them, except the flavor. They're just so different, and that's what's really fun. Tomorrow is going to be a considerable departure from where we started with microwaved brewing and tea bags. I'll save it as a surprise. See you then. Bye.